Who doesn't love a great baked ziti dish? Especially when you make it Neapolitan style with the rich Sunday sauce, some meatballs, gooey cheese. Well, that's what we're making today. Welcome to Actually Italian. I'm Sal, and the focus on this channel is to help you cook like an Italian. Any baked pasta is a great thing to have in your repertoire. You can customize it any way you like, which makes it a perfect fridge clean out recipe. Whatever you have left over, you could have some roasted vegetables in the fridge still, some ham, whatever it is, and you just throw it together in a baked pasta. And that's the origin of this Neapolitan style too, because they do their big Sunday sauce. By the way, it's sauce and not gravy, with loads of meatballs and sausages and meats, braciole. Afterwards, they might not have enough of that meat left over to make another second course for people. So they'll use all those leftovers to make a baked pasta to stretch everything. Today, I don't have any leftover Sunday sauce, so I'm gonna make everything from scratch. Since the meat sauce takes the longest to cook, that's what we're gonna start with. We're gonna keep it real simple today, and we're just gonna start with a pot with some extra virgin olive oil, some garlic, and some basil just to infuse the oil. We'll add passata and then the meat. We don't have to brown the meat at all. We can put it right in. We're gonna use a nice pork shoulder today. The reason is we want all that marbling and that collagen that's gonna break down and make for a super tender and flavorful sauce. We're gonna let this cook for at least an hour and a half. Since that's gonna take a while to cook, we can start working on the other elements. For instance, the meatballs. I'm not gonna get into all the details of the recipe for the meatballs in this video because I've already made a meatball masterclass with my killer meatball recipe. That's the recipe that I'm using today, so I'm gonna link to the video in the description box below for you. The only difference with these meatballs is that I'm gonna make them a lot smaller than I usually would. So I'm just gonna roll them out and set them aside, and then we're gonna head over to the stove to fry them up. I've got a deep, heavy bottom pot that I'm gonna use to fry these up. Once the oil's hot, we're just gonna put them in, mix them around a little bit. The point is just to get them brown. We don't really need to cook them through since they're gonna cook in the oven again in the pasta. Once they're nicely browned, I just set them aside on a wire rack just so they don't get greasy. It's been an hour and a half, and this is what the sauce looks like. It's been reduced, it's nice and dense, it's very rich, the meat is super tender. All I have to do is give it a little seasoning and give it a stir, and in the meantime, we can get the pasta going. If you like what you've seen so far, I'd love if you could give the video a like. That simple thing really helps the channel out. Traditionally, when they make this dish in Naples, they love using these long ziti that you just break in half. That's what I'm gonna use today, but you really feel free to use any kind of pasta that you like. So I've got the pasta in the boiling water now. We're gonna cook it to al dente. It's not gonna be al dente when we eat it, but we are gonna cook it to al dente. While that's cooking, I'm gonna remove the meat from the sauce and shred it up because we want a nice even layer. So rather than have big chunks of meat, we want it to be a little bit shredded. I'll reserve about half of that sauce. I'm gonna set it aside because we only need about half to toss the pasta in, and then we'll need more to put over the top at the end. Once the pasta's drained, I'm just gonna toss it in the pot with that sauce, make sure everything's nicely coated, and make sure that it is saucy because this pasta is gonna absorb that sauce as it bakes, and we don't want a dry pasta. Now we're ready to put this together. So I've got my assembly station here with everything ready to go. I've got my casserole dish, and I'm gonna start by taking some of the sauce that I reserved to put it on the bottom. Then I'll add a layer of pasta, and over that, I wanna put a layer of that shredded meat. Next up, I have some fresh mozzarella that I'm just gonna sprinkle around. Then I'm gonna sprinkle a little grated cheese. In this case, it's a mix of pecorino and Parmesan. You can use whatever kind you like though. We'll take half of the meatballs and just randomly place them around. And then next I have a very traditional ingredient that goes in just about every baked pasta in southern Italy, and that's some boiled eggs. Not everybody likes the boiled eggs in it, so feel free to leave them out, but I feel like it adds another layer of richness to the dish. After that, we just want to repeat those layers. So I'll put another layer of pasta, We're going to top this with another layer of mozzarella, random sprinkle of meatballs around. I'm going to add some more of that sauce on top of this too, so that way this doesn't dry out. And we're going to finish with some more grated cheese and more of the boiled eggs. Now it's ready for the oven, and we don't really need to bake it for that long because everything's cooked. You pretty much only need about 20-25 minutes depending on the thickness of the pasta. As you can see, we've got those perfect little bits that are browned and crunchy, and some of them even a little bit burnt, and that's what really makes a great baked ziti. But we do need to let this sit for about 10 minutes before we dig in, so that way everything kind of comes together. After the longest 10 minutes it seemed, we're finally ready to plate this up. The first thing you notice is that ooey gooey cheese, which is essential for a baked pasta. But it's really about the flavor. This sauce is very rich. It's still really tomatoey. You get that essence of tomato. The meat itself is super tender. It just melts in your mouth. And then you've got those meatballs that are still nice and tender because of the technique we use to make them. I love those bits of boiled egg, and then all the melted cheese. It just, all these elements are really working well together to make a classic Neapolitan baked ziti.